The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of the streaming platforms, public access channels, the Kitty Rose lifestyle, or the program underwriters.
Tim's on my feet, stomping out the negativity. Everybody not a friend of me. Spread the love, still I move deliberately. Bully face on, but the smile be heavenly. Brooklyn girls, so they love the energy. Love sincerity, so I take the liberty to take them on a journey lyrically. Through hallways and alleys.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Next Chapter, where we discuss shades of gray. I am your host, Minister Cat, aka Kitty Rose. And I know I start every show off by saying this is a hot one. And I think because this show is a hot one, okay? Are you guys ready? Are you guys ready for this week's topic of the week? It's gonna be a challenging one. Okay, here we go. This week's topic of the week is life after prison. Life after prison. Now, I know that's a tricky topic, first of all, but what do I mean by life after prison? Who in particular am I talking to? I'm actually not talking to the people that come home from being incarcerated. This conversation is geared to the families, the significant others, the friends of folks that come out of prison, how we actually help them navigate, and how sometimes we can actually be more of a problem than an actual solution. What do I mean by that? Well, before I read to you the clinical or the Google version of what this topic is going to be about, I'm going to share a story. So we are now in 2024, and this will be my brother, my biological brother, who is 10 months younger than me. This will be, I think he's been home now 13, maybe going on 15 years. But he's home going on 13, maybe 15 years after doing an 18-year stint. Full blown, not a break, not 5 years, not 10, 18 years. My brother went in at the age of 18 and came home at 32. So obviously in my mind, you're 32, but technically you're 18. So what are the hidden consequences, the impact first of incarceration? The hidden consequences or the impact of incarceration, the ordinary adaptive process of institutionalization or prisonation has become extraordinary, prolonged, and intense. I'm going to go back to my personal story. Among other things, these recent changes in prison life mean that prisoners in general, and some prisoners in particular, face more difficult and problematic transitions as they return to the free world. A range of structural and programmatic changes are required to address these issues. Among other things, social and psychological programs and resources must be made available in immediate, short-term, and long-term time frames. That is, modified prison conditions and practices as well as new programs are needed as preparation for release is starting to happen. But during transitional periods of parole or initial reintegration, as long as these services are in place, they can help ensure continued successful adjustment. But if these things are not in place, it could make the transition very difficult. And I'm not sure if you guys have heard, but the rate of people returning back to prison is ridiculously higher than those who don't return back. Now, the ones that return back, do they return back because they just don't know how to not be criminals? Or has the outside transition been so difficult that they don't know how to adapt on the outside? So let me go back to my personal story before we go to our first video that I was able to do some research on. So when my brother came home after doing an 18-year stint, while he was in prison, oh my God, he was so progressive, right? He became an author in prison. He studied other religions outside of the religion that we was raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. He became a Muslim. He became an imam. He was teaching in prison. He literally became this source of encouragement while he was incarcerated. Since he had wrote a book of poetry called A Black Man's Constitution to His Sisters. So when he wrote this book of poetry, now here I am, I was working in marketing. I was already marketing my husband's business and career. So I was in the field of meeting with people who was in the music business, who were poets like Jessica Care Moore, people, that were doing the damn thing, right? So when my brother, towards the end of his incarceration, we knew that, okay, you're about to come home. How do we prepare you for what to do next? So you're an author. Okay, boom. I'm going to make sure that you have like this book tour. I'm going to schedule you. I introduced him to certain people before he came home so he can have these relationships so that when he came home, he could jump right into it. But I didn't realize how much pressure I was putting on him. And that pressure was dangerous. Let's go to our first video. Our first video is, what challenges do people face after prison? I got this from PBS. Let's see what they had to say, and we'll come back and discuss.
For the hundreds of thousands of people being released from state and federal prisons each year, reestablishing their lives can be an uphill battle. The minefield of barriers and regulations that make it difficult to find a job or get housing and re-enter society can feel insurmountable. To get a glimpse of what that's like, William Brangham and producer Mike Fritz spent time with Michael Plummer as he navigates life on the outside after spending more than 2 decades behind bars.
For 42-year-old Michael Plummer, the reality of his freedom still hasn't set in.
You say, okay, is this real? Am I driving this car or am I at this restaurant? And so I'm used to being home, but mentally, the mind is always there.
There is the 23 years that Plummer spent in prison for a murder he committed when he was 16. He was released in 2020 thanks to a Washington, D.C. law that freed some longtime prisoners if their crimes were committed as juveniles. He's now been out for more than a year and a half, and we've been following Plummer as he's rebuilt his life.
1, 2.
He reconnected with his daughter, Mayana, who was just 18 months old when he was arrested, and he became a grandfather.
And there we go.
And he married Ramel Thompson, who he had dated as a teenager. He now works 2 jobs, one working for Clean Decisions, a company that hires formerly incarcerated people.
You want to get people in your corner to champion you, so I champion you.
And another working as what's known as a credible messenger, where he counsels young people who are in custody in Washington, D.C.
You always have a choice in every matter.
Plummer's partner in that job is 47-year-old Anthony Petty, whom he met in prison.
This time right here, you're basically in a confined area. Use this time to do something. And what you do, you read, you learn.
When Petty was released last year, after being in prison for nearly 30 years for murder, Plummer helped him land this job and trained him how to do it.
He served a 30-year prison term. He reformed his life while in there. And even though he spent a lengthy time in prison, it didn't affect his, mental capabilities of being stable. And so he's able to share with the youth a world of wisdom.
We went to jail when we was 16. So one of the most important things that I want to do with the young people is I don't want them to go through what me and Michael went through. That's the most important thing.
Right.
And by me being around Michael in this workforce, the credible message workforce, you know, I learned a lot of things just being around him.
When I was young, you know, went down the path I went down.
Research suggests this type of mentorship can have a big impact on young adults in the justice system. One study found that over a 2-year period, a similar credible messenger program in New York helped reduce felony reconviction rates by more than half.
I want to get out, go home, have a good job.
One young man in the Washington, D.C. program told me these mentors are trusted because of their own backgrounds.
They was incarcerated once before. They ain't let the 25 years, 35 years of life impact them on what they got going on for the future. But they make us feel like that we are in their shoes and that we can do bigger things with our life. And we do have a future and we do have a family.
I know you as a mother, you always worry about what your son going through.
Whew. I'm just gonna pause for a second. How many of us are familiar with that story? Not a lot of us, but those that are, we realize that when people serve those type of stints, that, yeah, more than likely they went in as a young person. They went in as a child or as a young person, as the example that I shared with you of my brother who went in at 18. So what I took from that video was how it, one, can be an uphill burden and battle for those that come home. Definitely, or especially coming home from such a long stint. Now, we're not taking anything away from people who, you know, do short-term stints in and out of prison. 5 years, 2 years, 1 year. But it's different for those that go in at 16, 17, 18 years old and come out as full-grown adults because they literally are re-entering society. Re-entering society when everything has now changed. If you went in at 16 and 18, yes, in prison, you have access to maybe television, you have access to catalogs, you have access to clothes, but a MetroCard happened during that time. The television changed. We went from the box to the big box to the flat screens, the remotes, like little things like that. That MetroCard on the train and the bus will confuse anybody. So imagine if you're not even used to how to insert it into the machine, into the bus. Because reality has not set in. Your reality is the, what they call it, 3 meals in a cot? What they call it? What they say, someone in the control room? 3 hot meals in a cot, something like that. So you get so used to almost being programmed. You're getting told when to wake up. You're getting told when to go to sleep. You're getting told when to eat. You're getting told when to play. You're getting told every part of your day when to go to work. Now, you're being told that on the outside, but no one's literally, you know, knocking on your bedroom door. You know what I'm saying? No one is banging on your apartment. You might have an alarm clock that you set, that you wake up to. So the mind is always at the place that's most familiar to them, which is the prison that they were in the last 18, 20, 30 years. And this goes for both men and women. I have a girlfriend of mine who spent 10 years, and her transition when she came home was very difficult. So this transition that is difficult for formerly incarcerated friends and family is not a male issue. It's a people issue. Because at the end of the day, what I also wanted to reiterate was how you need people who want to champion for you. So we can support them, but how we can be a pressure is by having these expectations of what they should do when they come home, right? So for me, like my brother, I had this expectation of, okay, we got this college tour set up for your book, you know? Let's follow up. Let's get ready to do this. Have you done any practicing when it comes to, you know, speaking and what poem you want to show out of the book? All of these little nuances that I was like in his ear, like almost on his neck. And it became such a pressure. And then not only did he come home to the pressures of his sister, But then he came home to getting married. So now you have a new wife, and that wife had a kid. So you got a new wife and a stepchild after you just spent 18 years going in at 18, now to be someone's husband, literally a month out of prison. So, not to put any shade on my brother, but yeah, you came home a month later, got married, have a family, you got your sister on your neck to get this book tour. We almost set you up for failure because of our own desires and excitement that we had for him. But our excitement was our excitement, not really realizing how he needed to gradually embrace this re-entry into the world. So why that's so difficult is, as the brother mentioned, it's the mental capability that you haven't been able to wrap yourself around yet. So one of the things that helps is mentorship. I always talk about mentorship just in regular life, but there's something when you have someone in your corner championing you that understands what you're going through. Not just someone who's supportive of you, but actually can know from where you came from. So right here in New York, I'm sure globally there are services all around, but here in New York, the two off the top of my head I can think of is the Fortune Society and the Exodus program. Both of those programs I'm directly familiar with, that I know are great programs to help families, help family members when coming home out of incarceration. But now, what does the second video show us? The second video is what to expect from someone getting out of prison. Should we have expectations? And if we do, or if we should, or if we have them, what should they be, if any at all? I got this from the Savage family. Let's check it out and discuss when we come back.
Somebody who's done time, let's say like you know someone who's getting ready to parole to your house, getting ready to come to your house and stay with you. Or if you got a husband or a man who's coming out of prison getting ready to stay with you. Number one is understand this, you cannot deal with this individual, this man. You cannot deal with him the way you would deal with any other regular man. This dude's coming out of war. He's coming out either shell-shocked, ready for war still, up to no good, or trying to figure things out. And when someone's in the trying to figure things out phase or the shell-shock phase, obviously if they're in the troublemaking phase still, they're not going to last long. They'll be back in prison. You don't even got to worry about trying to get to know them. They'll be gone. But the other two, you gotta kind of learn them. Take some time to learn how to communicate with them because they're not like you. They're not like any man you've known, and their anger, their snapping is different than what you know and perceive that to be. Now, you don't have to go to prison to like be dangerous or nothing like. All I'm saying is they just, how I was personally speaking, I was very conversation sensitive. Like certain words would piss me right off. Like people in society, citizens, y'all don't really talk like inmates with the respect, man. Like it's weird. A lot of you guys joke around and say bitch. Like that's a big thing out in like Miami and shit. All them spots, they use that bitch word like it's nothing because that's the swag up there. They don't trip on that shit. But that word down here gets you lit up, man. Like lit up quick, fast, and you won't even know what the fuck, you won't even know what happened. Oh, you know, already understanding that this person is different from you, different from people you know, has not been in the circles that you've been in, you know, to say the least, has been in the circles that you don't recognize, that you're not from, they're alien to you. Those circles are alien to you. Already, as a man, you know, that's done time incarcerated, I'll tell you right now, when I got out, super high levels of being on edge, being defensive, being more aware, keen, watching situations that no one else watched. And to this day, I see situations that my love, my wife, when we go out, she's very aware, but she's still like, I'm just always on it. on everything. Any little thing, I'll get to it before it gets to me.
I think my brother's like that too. I'm pretty sure he is, actually. So what were some of the suggestions that this brother mentioned to us? Did you catch any? I caught 5 at least. How many did you catch? So what I caught was something as simple and as not simple, something as simple as learn them. I had to learn my brother again. Now, we had communication during the 18 years he was incarcerated. But it was different because, one, our relationship was really primarily written-based, letter-based. We did a few phone calls over the years. I did a few visits. My brother wasn't incarcerated in New York, so I had to travel to see him. And I had a small family at the time. I was a new wife with 3 small children. So when we did go, you know, we went, like I said, far in between. Matter of fact, a funny story, one time we went... And we had a woman CEO who was intimately involved with my brother. And she was mad at him. So she said that he couldn't have visits and turned us around. Now, we came from New York and we went to Baltimore to go visit him. Me, my husband, my 3 kids, we got all the way there for us to be turned around because the CEO was mad at my brother. Now, let me tell you how that happened. My brother... He about 5'2", you know what I'm saying? But he got that gift of words. I told you he was a poet and wrote a book. So my brother, God bless him, he was one of those 5'2" charming young men who was fortunate to have relationships with women in prison. So he had relationships with COs, he had relationships with nurses. He never had to deal with forming a relationship with a same-sex individual. Because a lot of times we also hear of stories, especially from women, but it happens with men, where you're not necessarily a homosexual, but because of the amount of time you begin to spend with someone, that level of intimacy can be shared sometimes of folks of the same sex. And they say, like Vegas, what you do in prison, nobody has to know. But my brother wasn't one of those persons or people that got into those type of relationships, which is why the other part came into the anger triggers, the things that they're not like us. You know, they spent so many years in prison, they've almost become programmed. So we're thinking that, you know, my brother's 10 months younger than me, so how is he not me? How is he not similar to me? But I didn't spend 18 years with somebody telling me when to get up, when to lay down. And the thing also about my brother, which is the fortune in him of being a charmer, was because he is only 5'2" and a brown skin, light skin kind of gentleman, to protect himself, of course, he got into a situation. And that situation, to protect himself, landed him in the hole for 11 months. But that landing him in the hole actually protected him in some weird kind of way, because it also, when he came out, set the tone that, people ain't mess with him. And he wasn't tempted along those lines. Now, I'm sure he had to protect himself in other ways, which is now why the brother was talking about even the way that people communicate with each other. In prison, there's sensitive conversation. So there is oddly a weird respect way that people do communicate, that when they come home, they're like, wait, now what? Like, how you so comfortable using such terminology? But then also, how you so comfortable knowing that if you use certain terminology or certain verbiage in prison, it's a wrap. So my brother, again, being a wordsman, you know what I'm saying, being short but able to handle his business that first year, since he didn't have to deal with forming romantic relationships with other men, his charming ass was able to establish it with the women that worked in the facilities. And what happened is, one time, you know, one of the sisters was mad with him and turned his family around. So I don't know how good that was, actually, that he was messing with the women inmates. But yeah, I think this is a good time to take a break.
Yeah, I know, but What are you looking for?
So we become almost like aliens to them. And they become aliens to us because they're different. They're also learning themselves if they went in at such a young age. They're learning themselves in a new society. And even though our society is kind of janky, it's not the same type of structure that's given in the prison. So you're always on edge. You're always aware of your surroundings because you had to be that way to protect your not only physical space, but your mental space. So you don't know how to turn that off now that you're outside. So the third video I was able to get was, we have made coming home from prison entirely too hard. Teresa Hodge, from a TEDx talk in Mid-Atlantic Salon, she kind of gave some feelings about, or her thoughts about, how we've made prison difficult or hard when they come home, or how we've made the come home difficult after coming home from prison. Let's check it out and come back and discuss.
When it was time to leave prison, I was really excited. But to be honest, I was afraid again. This time I wasn't afraid when it comes to the women who I met. I was afraid when I was leaving what would happen to many of them. A lot of them didn't have the support system I had. And so I was concerned that they were going to return back to under-resourced communities, not a support system like mine. And I was concerned that many of them wouldn't be able to reconnect back to society in a meaningful way. I never met a woman who was laying on her bunk saying, I can't wait to go back to prison. It's absolutely no way of life. And yet, 70% of the people who go to prison within 3 years return. That's not just an indictment on our government, it's an indictment on all of us. Because at the end of the day, we've made coming home entirely too hard.
Oof. Oof. What? What? She said that's an indictment on us as a society. Ooh. Did she say that 70%? 70. Not 60, not 50, not 20 or 10, 70. Within 3 years, end up going back. Ooh, child. But she made a valid point about being afraid of not just the impact that she's gonna have to deal with coming out, but the ones that she's leaving behind, they may not have the support that she might have when she comes home. And now, going back to my own personal example, I can remember my brother having that difficulty. Because even though we weren't the best support, we were support. And my brother had became such a support to so many young and older men in his incarceration. So he was concerned that he could not still be that support for people once he came home, because now he's trying to focus and build his life. So he may not call as much. He may not visit. He may not write. He may not send commissary. How does that make someone feel who's spent so many years, so many hours, so many days, so many minutes with someone in your bunk, with someone in your cellie, with someone in your division? And now you're home, but they're left behind. And I remember actually some of his friends or some of the people that he was encouraging, they tried to reach out to me after he left and try me to continue to have a relationship with them. And that was difficult even for me because my relationship really was only the extent of when my brother was incarcerated because they helped me like make calls to him or visit him. You know what I'm saying? So now I've cut myself off from being a help to them. So not only did they lose my brother, but they lost me. And I didn't realize how difficult that was on my brother. And I wasn't able to support him emotionally on how he was dealing with those he left behind. Oof. Wow. Wow. Is it time for our last video in this segment, or is it time for a break? Let's go to the last video. The last video was Easing Prisoner Reentry, an ex-prisoner's guide to easing the transition after prison. I think his name is Larry Lawton. Let's see what he had to say, and then we'll close up.
So how do you, as a person, how does a person help a person like that? Well, the first thing I do is I tell people when that person comes home, I don't want you to be telling them what to do. I want you to educate them. If you're a loved one, if you're a mom or a dad or a brother or a sister, the first thing you want to do is if a person gets out of prison, you show him your TV. He's not going to know how to work the cable if he's been in a decade. He does not know how to work that cable. Now, he's going to figure it out, but guess what you're going to do? As his loved one, and you're meaning this with all of heart, so I can't hate you. It's all about heart, but what are you going to do? You're going to take the clicker from him and say, come here, let me show you how to work it. You hit the guide button right here, and then you could go here, and you could hit last channel. And look at all the channels. 500 channels on cable. And he is going to look at you two ways. Down deep without saying anything, he's going to say, what does this person think, I'm fucking stupid? I don't care if you're the mother. I don't care if you're the brother. I don't care if you're a cousin. He's going to, down deep, look at you like, what do you think, I can't read? I can't figure shit out? I know I went to prison. Well, I'm not stupid. That's what he's going to be thinking. Not going to say it to you, but that's what he's going to be thinking. Especially if you're a little bit more like you want to help him so bad, so you grab the remote controls. Hey, come here, look, let me show you. Oh, you got to watch this show. Look, I taped it for you. Here, it's on the list. He is totally overwhelmed. And you, as a person who loves him, should try to integrate him back into society in a very slow and methodical way. Everybody thinks reintegrating and reducing recidivism. The word recidivate means to go back to prison. There's a very high recidivism rate of people who get out of prison. We have one of the highest. That's why the United States is a big failure in its criminal justice system and its penal system. The prison system doesn't rehabilitate, it punishes. Now, part of that is what the law says. In fact, it's the first part of the law books is punishment followed by its supposable rehabilitation. But sadly, they don't do it. Everybody thinks, oh, let's help inmates. Let's do this. Let's get them a job. Let's get them housing. And we'll reintegrate them into society, and they should have no problem. Listen, we gave them a house, or we got them a place to stay, and we got them a job at this, call center. Let me explain how wrong it is. Reintegration back in society is here. It's here. It's not so much in the money things. You need them. You can't put a person on the street because he knows how to survive on the street, and he's just going to do what he needed to do to eat, just like you would, to survive. He's going to do what he needs to do to survive. Well, anyway, so a person gets out of prison, and you're treating him like he's stupid. Not on purpose, because you love him, because you want him to get the best.
Not on purpose. So we have to even be, like they say, touch them or deal with them with kid gloves. Kid gloves, because it's the basics that they need assistance with, but without downplaying or making them feel stupid, because that's also a trigger. We do it in a way that we're doing it with them. What do I mean? So like the brother was saying, and I love the fact that I gave you guys black men, a woman, and a white guy, because unfortunately, prison doesn't have a color. Crime, bad decisions, mistakes, life lessons is not a black or white thing. It's a people thing. We all go through transitions. We make bad decisions. We have consequences, such as life. So this brother here was giving us the feedback about going back to the basics, showing them the basics very slow. What did he say? Methodical? You know, in a way that, again, doesn't seem like we're making them feel stupid, even though they know they don't know. This remote got, I don't even know how many layers a remote has. It has 100 buttons that you don't even use. And then most of the time, TVs don't even have one remote. I know for my television, I got the Roku remote, I got the TV remote, I got the speaker remote. Like, there's 4 remotes to my one television. So in a very loving but slow way, like he did with the example, taking the remote and be like, yo, let me show you. Guess what? Look at what you now have. Oh my goodness. You can do this, you can do that. So we want to apply that when it comes to most things. We want to apply that when it comes, so wait, that's the Jesus moment. Woo, yes. See how the Holy Spirit works? That's the Jesus moment. So let's put that up on the screen. What is the Jesus moment? The Jesus moment is working with our loved ones to help the mental part of the reentry process. Because everything is in the mind. When you feel overwhelmed, even if you're not, but if you think you're overwhelmed, if you feel overwhelmed, you could actually, instead of blossoming, families mean well. I meant well. But how many of us are actually, I don't know, maybe our own sense of therapy, maybe what I should have done, and now what I do is ask my brother what he needs rather than tell him what he needs. You need to do this. You need to get this. You need to do this. Why you haven't done this yet? Instead of, can I assist you with this? Would you like me to show you this? Let's do this way. Let's do this together. So the same way these last couple of weeks that I've been having these conversations about how to talk to my adult children, how to live as an empty nester, how to maintain my life as a Christian woman who's dating, like all of these things always came back to delivery, tone, verbiage. So I think that that's the same thing with the Jesus moment, what they can take off the off the screen, is the same thing with the Jesus moment in a sense of not only being patient with my brother or those that we love that are coming home, but being patient with myself and taking the time to not only push my agenda of what I want, my expectations of what I would like for that loved one, whether it's my brother, whether it's my girlfriend who came home a few years, whoever it is in my life, giving them the time and the grace to be patient with themselves so that my anxiety on them is not being put on them even more, so that I'm now creating their own anxiety, but the anxiety of the loved ones that they're attached to. Does that make sense? Did I stumble over my words? Are we getting that? So I think that that's a great Jesus moment, and to incorporate scripture. You know, that's why the Bible encourages us to go to, like, let's say church or temple or the Kingdom Hall or religious ceremonies, because the importance of congregation is not so that we can simply just hear the preacher give us the message. But the body, the congregation is a part of the body of the suit and armor that Jehovah gives us to help us protect ourselves through this thing we call life, right? So the congregation, the church, the community is a part of that armor that helps to encourages us, that helps support us. So when we talk about congregating, that's why the scriptures encourages us to do so. Not just for the scriptural doctrine, but for the support that we give each other as we're learning, as we're drawing closer to God, and as we're going through these challenges in life, whether it's the regular challenges that we already have or the challenges like coming home from the prison system. Because just like the brother said, it's a big failure here in the United States. Or is it? Is it the state? Is it the okie doke? Because in Norway, their rehabilitation system works. So if it can work in other continents, why is it not working in the United States? Why is 70% of people going back? That sounds like the over for the under, the okie doke for me. So if we got the government strategically manipulating folks so that people go in, because guess what? Prison is the modern day slavery. They give those cats $1 a day. They make $30 a month. Not what's in their commissary, what they get from the state. You tell me what the setup is. That's enough of my pulpit. When we come back from this last break, we're going to come back to the Did You Know? So check out the last break for the evening.
Yeah, I know. Wait, I don't know. Yeah, you just did that. Look at that. It's so sad.
Did you know, did you know, did you know? Did you know? I'm going to give you guys today 5 things about re-entry into, and I got this information from the Institute of Justice. This is the official website of the United States Government Department of Justice. So this week's Did You Know are 5 things that you need to know about re-entry. But before I go into that, I just want to tell you, what is re-entry? Re-entry is the process by which a person in correctional confinement prepares for release and transitions back into the community. It's essential to understand how research can inform each stage of the re-entry process, increasing the odds that people returning home can successfully and productively remain in their communities. So what are these 5 things, okay? Take your pen and paper, write them down, or just play this back over and over so you can get it good. The first, programs and services should be tailored to the unique needs and risk factors of an individual to the extent possible. So just like I was telling you about these agencies here in New York, like the Fortune 500 Society or Exodus, there are certain programs that you could kind of do some research about what they do for each type of service that they provide, whether it's housing, whether it's mental, whether it's clothing, whether it's I said the mental, whatever it is, education-wise, do the research along with that person coming home to get these services already in place. So when they come home, they don't have to find them. They're already ready for them to join and participate. 2, support services should be holistic in nature. What does that mean? Research shows that to promote successful reentry, a program or service should be delivered at the right time for the individual. Take, for example, an individual who is exiting prison in search of employment, right? Providing employment support alone ignores their need for stable housing or treatment for, let's say, an underlying substance use or disorder, right? So attending to those needs makes the prospect of keeping a job more likely. So if you help them get a job, but there's still other issues mentally or substance that they're fighting with, guess what's going to happen? they're going to lose that job. So again, personally taking it back home. You know, my brother, when he was inside, was the I can't think of the right word. I want to say empirical, but I'm using it wrong. Exception to, like, my brother was such an example. He was the G. He was the man when he was in prison. Didn't do anything in prison. Drugs, drink, nothing. But because the transition was so difficult when he came home, guess what happened? He ended up becoming an alcoholic. Now, as he became an alcoholic, as it was happening, we didn't have services in place to help him deal with the transition coming home. That, guess what, alcohol became that go-to, right? Because now you want to fit in. But it ended up being a damage, a hurt, not a success, not an add-on. Because now, when he did get in a position coming out of prison, he was working at DSW. That became an issue, and he lost that position. He actually lost being able to live at my house. I sent his behind down south, but that was good. Because when I sent him down south, he actually was now able to make this life for himself in the South, which is so much better than if he was here in New York. So again, bringing that full circle, sometimes the places that they come home to aren't the best environments for them. So it's actually thinking about where they can do the end of their parole at, if not in the city. Baltimore was where my brother got arrested. Being released back to Baltimore, that element that you went into at 18 was not going to be what was ideal. His family support was in New York. So he was able to get his parole in New York so that he can have the support of an element that would be supportive, not an element that would take him back. 3, cognitive behavioral therapy benefits all facets of reentry participation or reentry preparation and post-release programs. We all could use therapy, but imagine what our loved ones coming home from prison. Because again, that mental that was done on them. The research is clear. Programs that include a cognitive behavior therapy component are effective in supporting successful reentries. CBT can help people discover and change the thought process behind past and current negative behaviors. It can also restore self-esteem, impart tools and strategies for making more positive life choices, and help people improve in their decision-making, social skills, moral reasoning, self-control, and impulse management. Because remember, the cat was telling us, triggers. You talk to me the wrong way. You look at me the wrong way. We already got triggers when we ain't been in prison. So imagine someone who spent 18, 20, 30 years in prison, and they come outside and deal with folks that don't know how to talk to you. Enough said. 4, community supervision works best when it includes robust support functions. Robust support functions. Matching supervision style and the frequency and the intensity of programming with a person's risk, need, and helps promote positive reentry and reduces recidivism. Did I say that right? For example, lower risk individuals should not be subjected to overly strenuous surveillance and supervision, because that might exacerbate already what they were feeling in prison and might make them want to go back. And overemphasize on technical violation and arrest for minor crimes may hide improvements I'm gonna read that again. An overemphasis on technical violations and arrests for minor crimes may hide improvements the individual is making towards addressing needs. Okay, so I know what that means is like if something happened to someone or they participated in a crime when they were 16, 17, and 18, what they're learning is still different than the elements that they're coming out of. Again, remember, there's a saying that people say when they go into prison. They remember the day they leave, the day they go in, and the day they leave. Everything in between is a blur. So if you go in at 16, if you go in at 18, if you go in at a certain age, that's the age you're coming out of. So you kind of have to be treated as such. Further, when individuals under community supervision perceive their interactions with supervision officers are fair, they are less likely to engage in criminal behavior or violate their conditions of supervisors. We always hear, sometimes we get those COs that are a pain in the ass or, are mean because they don't like their job. So sometimes the way that someone is interacting with us, like a CO, might frustrate our loved ones so much that type of support that is not really support is also what can trigger them. So if they know that they have to deal with that type of negative support, then we have to kind of make other support systems or programs in place for them. But hopefully, if they get a good CO, like my brother got a good CO. Not CO, parole officer. Parole officer. So his parole officer actually is the one who approved his move to New York while he was on parole. So you can have people that can be put into place that can actually hurt your efforts or help your efforts. And 5, the last one, we must implore more nuanced measures of recidivism that presents the individual as a whole. Everybody's case is different. Everybody's situation is different. So people need things that are designed for them because their circumstances are different. My brother, yes, obviously murdered someone. That's why he served that long stint of time. But my brother didn't necessarily come from, we didn't really grow up in the hood. We didn't grow up, and this is no shade. This is not even, trying to be shady or be negative, but we grew up in a predominantly tree-lined neighborhood. We grew up in a house. We didn't have a two-family household, but my mom was in our lives until about 10 when she got remarried. And then my stepfather and my brother actually have a wonderful relationship. My brother actually, that's his dad. That's his father, my mother's current husband, who she's been married to 3 times. But she's been with this man since my brother and I was 9, 10 years old, and now we're 49, 50 years old. So, my brother has had family support even prior to his incarceration. We had spirituality, we didn't grow up around guns, we grew up in the gangs. But again, our life necessarily wasn't the average stereotype of those that live in a hood. So for us, it was not the norm. Like, I didn't know anybody who went to prison until my brother. So everything is not fit for everybody. You know what I mean. So rearrest is considered the most common and observable measure of recidivism across the justice system. Yet, it is a relatively poor indicator of how an individual is faring in their post-release experience. It is not a credible measure of culpability owing to lack of due process, and the risk of arrest can be varied by community and personal demographics. We must move beyond rearrest and redefine how we measure success. This does not negate the importance of examining when and if an individual re-engages in criminal activity after the release from custody. It is an important data point. However, it is only one in a diverse number of measures that should be assessed. Just as re-entry is a process that just as re-entry is a process, success should be measured on a continuum. Success should be measured on a continuum. I hope those pointers were helpful. I encourage all to go to the Institute of Justice and find out other ways that we can be proactive in helping our loved ones deal with the adjustment of coming back or re-entering into society. Because isn't that the goal? Don't we want them to stay with us? Like I said, I started out, my brother's been home now 13, 15 years. Almost amount of time that he's been incarcerated. Matter of fact, my kids don't even remember the time that he was incarcerated. They don't remember those years of talking to him on the phone and writing letters. They only know of what they know these last 15 years. And thank God, by the grace of God, that we were able to hold to that course. So, I'm so happy that we are ending this on a good note. And I encourage all you guys to follow my Facebook group page so that you can see behind the scenes bloopers. You could ask questions. You could make suggestions. You can actually give some information. I only gave two sources, the Fortune 500 and the Exodus. I'm sure that there are other programs and other services that can be put into place. Please use my Facebook group page as a way to put some of those suggestions that you might know of that can help those loved ones that come home from being incarcerated from long stints in the prison system. And you know what I don't like, what I need you guys to do, which is the part of the show that I need you to follow, like, and subscribe. Follow, like, and subscribe. This is a community effort that is done by the support, and the success comes from the support that you in the community give. So you guys see there's a barcode here that you guys can take your camera, your cell phone, scan, and sign up, because we are needing your help in this upcoming petition to save public access programming. And we're going back up to Albany once again to make our voices heard. So join us. So as you're watching this program, don't forget, take your phone, scan right here. Is it right here? I think it's right here. It could be right here. Yep, it's scan right here and sign our petition so that you can continue to support us, not just by liking, following, and subscribing to our programs, but also showing your support in this community programming that we are doing right here in the Bronx and really locally here in New York. So once again, this is The Next Chapter, where we discuss shades of gray. I am your host, Minister Cat, AKA Kitty Rose.
To take them on a journey lyrically through hallways and alleys, dark days I carry, sharp pains and bellies. All days be heavy when you're programmed to survive. Legendary ciphers get the MCs energized. The city never sleeps.